Already, it is a busy time in our politics, both on the state and the federal level, with new candidates entering into the presidential election for 2024. Crisis on the debt ceiling discussions continuing in Washington, D.C., potentially coming to a close, but not quite at the finish line just yet. And of course, rumors already beginning for a potential 2026 gubernatorial candidates right here in the state of Michigan. So much to go over, and that's why we're glad to have Dave Dulio from Oakland University, where he serves as a distinguished professor of political science and is the director of their Center for Civic Engagement. Dave, thanks for being with us today.
Hey, good morning, Tyler. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, glad to have you on as we're in the midst of the Mackinac Policy Conference week. One of those times as we talk about all these different complicated issues at the national level, statewide. This is the place, and this is an event year after year where many consequential decisions and discussions are had amongst our leadership in the state of Michigan, both on the local level and on the statewide level. So let's give some context to why this is such an important time of the year at the Mackinac Policy Conference. What does this really serve as on the statewide level from a political standpoint, as that touch point where so many different issues are discussed? How does something like this have an impact on our statewide politics year after year?
Well, this is one of those sort of non-governmental, it is a non-governmental gathering, right? I mean, and it just has got such a reputation for a rich program and a long history of drawing major players, all of the power brokers that are movers and shakers in state politics and federal politics to some extent, gather on Mackinac for a few days, and it's here where informal conversations take place. It could be over lunch, it might be over a drink, it could be just walking on the porch of the Grand Hotel, where the conversations start to happen and continue to happen throughout the week. It's really just a place where a lot of the movers and shakers gather and can start to get some work done.
Yeah, a lot of really interesting discussions going to be happening this week, and people both throughout the state of Michigan and our leadership, celebrities and impact players in politics and in business throughout the country also going to be there. Garland Gilchrist II, our lieutenant governor, having a couple of speaking appearances today. Also, Mark Cuban, the owner of the Dallas Mavericks, and of course, one of the Sharks from Shark Tank, also coming in to this year's event, and will be seen on Mackinac Island this week as well, including others like the mayor of Detroit, Mike Duggan. Now, in Washington, D.C., some very important discussions have been happening, a battle throughout the past several weeks as well on the debt ceiling and discussions on how to address the debt limit on a national level. Now, President Joe Biden and Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy had a meeting late last week and actually came to an agreement on a deal for a debt ceiling package. Now, this is where we get to an interesting point, because a deal can be made, but just because a deal is made between the Speaker of the House and the President of the United States doesn't mean that it's going to happen. And already, Dave, we're seeing some scrambling once again from the Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, trying to wrangle his own party into accepting a deal that he reached with the president. So give us an update on that and where Kevin McCarthy is at in terms of convincing his fellow Republicans to go along with this deal he made with the president.
Yeah, I think that first off, we should note that this is life in divided party government, right? When you've got one party in control of one of the three elected branches of government, or elected offices, right? House, Senate, and White House. We're going to be in this kind of deal-making mode out of necessity, right? That one party can't get everything that it wants. And that's exactly what we're seeing. So to your point, the Speaker of the House, right, the leader of the Republicans in Congress, and the President of the United States, who is, certainly a leader of the party more so than even somebody like Chuck Schumer or Hakeem Jeffries, the Democratic leaders in both chambers. They worked out an agreement. And as you note, right now they both have to sell it to their members in the House and the Senate. And there are any number of Republicans that are not going to vote for this thing. At the same time, there are a number of Democrats who aren't going to vote for this thing, right? Elizabeth Warren is a no. It wouldn't surprise me if Bernie Sanders was a no. The Progressive Caucus in the House of Representatives, it doesn't like it. The Freedom Caucus in the House on the Republican side doesn't like it. So, you've got basically the edges of both party caucuses not liking this. However, you have the Problem Solvers Caucus in the House, of which many Michigan House members, Alyssa Slotkin, Haley Stevens, Debbie Dingell, John James, and I think there's actually another one or two, Hillary Skolton from the West Side. The Problem Solvers Caucus has endorsed it, and that's a bipartisan group of members. And when they endorse a piece of legislation, they all commit to vote for it. So that's going to be a big bipartisan group of 64 members in the House that are going to vote for this thing. And I think that was a big deal. And I guess the point of all of this is, I'd say two more things. One, when you've got the extremes not liking it, but the middle liking it, they probably made a pretty good bargain. They didn't get everything they wanted, but neither did the other side. And I would also say, too, that this is just an entirely predictable outcome, right? Where for the last several weeks, every twist and turn that has been mentioned in news reports or on social media had all kinds of people wigging out about one twist or another turn, when this is exactly where we probably, with reasonable looking forward from a couple weeks ago, could have predicted we would be.
Yeah, it's a simple game of political chicken, as it's been the last several times we've reached this point in recent years, where they've had the debt ceiling be reached or be near being reached, and they have to negotiate a deal to increase the debt limit in order to prevent a default that both political parties, especially when it comes up in an election year or near an election year, are really trying to vie for position and use a major dilemma as a means to do that. So how much of a factor did that play in this particular negotiation, especially considering the fact that we're expecting to have a very competitive race for the presidency between incumbent Democrat Joe Biden and whomever ultimately gets the nomination on the Republican side?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, right? I mean, to some extent, it is a game of chicken, and I think that the actions by both the White House and the Speaker's office in the first few weeks of the negotiation, or the first, at least when it was, or the first meetings in earnest, if you will, not even between the two main players, but their staff, right? I think you could see that game of chicken playing out, where they'd meet and then they would accuse the other one of not moving. I mean, that's just playing to their base, which they have to do. But I think that nobody really wants to even come close to a default on the U.S. obligations. And that's in part, I think, because we've never really gotten that far, right? There have been some times when some payments weren't made, but nobody really knows what would happen if this was a protracted period of time where the U.S. couldn't make payments on whether it's interest on the debt, or to our creditors, or Social Security payments, or other benefits that would need to go out. So, and nobody wants to do that because nobody knows the outcome of that, right? What would really happen if payments like that weren't made? Nobody wants to cross that threshold, which is why, again, getting a deal done, even at a late hour, is entirely predictable.
Joining us on the program today, as he always does each and every Wednesday, is Dave Dulio, Distinguished Professor of Political Science at Oakland University, where he also serves as a director of their Center for Civic Engagement. You can find more information on oakland.edu/CCE, oakland.edu/CCE. CCE. And Dave, we're not even half a year past Governor Whitmer beginning her second term in office and already hearing some rumors of potential rumblings of Democrats who may run to replace her in 2026, with rumors this week both of Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan potentially running for that office, as well as a rising star in the Democratic Party, Senator Mallory McMorrow. In terms of the likelihood of these two candidates potentially running for that office in the future, where do you see that at this point, especially with someone like Mallory McMorrow, who has said that she's not going to run for the U.S. Senate spot, something that she could have potentially contended for, even running against someone like Alyssa Slotkin. In terms of going for that gubernatorial office, where do you stand on where these two political candidates may be in terms of their ability to compete for winning those positions in 2026?
Sure. I think that they're both strong candidates, so they would make strong candidates for that office. I think they both have a number of really good qualifications that would be attractive to a Democratic primary base. The mayor's work in the city, I think it gives him a strong foundation, and of course Senator McMorrow has become not just a rising star in Michigan, but nationally, given the profile that she's created for herself, and as well as a national fundraising base. So, I think that they're both likely names that would pop up, this far out. But as you know, Tyler, right? We are years away from any decisions being made, and that amount of time in politics is just an incredibly long way ahead of us to try to make any kind of reasonable prognostications.
Yeah, so plenty of time left to make those prognostications, those predictions. We still don't even know who the contenders may be on the Republican side, let alone who's going to be the final nominations for the President of the United States on the Republican side, and who may go up against President Joe Biden. So many things to consider in the future, and a great place to go for resources on considering those issues and talking about the issues is the Oakland University Center for Civic Engagement. Dave, with 1 minute left in our program today, anything coming up at the Center for Civic Engagement that people should mark their calendars for?
We're on hiatus for the summer. One of our big main audiences is our students at OU, and with the vast majority of them not on campus in the summer doing internship, they're out doing internships, they're working jobs. We take a break from programming, but we'll be back in the fall with a number of things I think that your viewers and listeners will find interesting, and I hope that they'll come out and join us for everything we've got going in the fall.
Well, Dave, we appreciate you joining us each and every week to talk about the latest in Michigan and federal politics and how that impacts us here in Oakland County and beyond. Thank you very much.
You got it. Thanks for having me.